Hi, everyone. It's Linda G, and I have Andre here from Astrology Alert. I landed into him quite accidentally, and his little blips. He's not like overwhelming. I really like him, and I think you're pretty spot on, Andre. And even with my birthday, which I was born September 10th, 1972.
What?
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So,
That's funny.
He's already told me just on blurping on that, he was like, whoa, while we were talking, he was coming up with stuff. So I just want to tell you, I really love your show. I will post Astrology Alert is the name of his YouTube, and I will post his information on how you can book an appointment, etc. So Andre, I was talking to you and I realized we need to get this on tape. Tell us again how you even got started in this. Or tell me.
I was telling you that when I was 21, I was drawn to learning meditation, not really for the reasons that I discovered it was great for. I thought it would help me improve in some way. So I learned TM at the time in the late 70s, 79. And after the weeks were passing, then the months, I began to get this sense that I should look into the planets, that astrology might have some validity. I have no idea why, other than to speculate. When people say turns on the right brain, so the right hemisphere, which is more intuitive, etc. So then about a year later, I finally decided to go to the occult shop and buy the books to be able to draw charts. There were no computers. So using fairly basic high school math, I started to draw charts, and pretty quickly, and this is where some people would say, oh, you're probably an astrologer in a past life. I don't know, maybe, who knows? All I know is that I'm looking at this and I look back to quite a few years before I was 14 or whatever. And I remember that I pretty quickly figured out the moon had something to do with this part of the body, the stomach. And when I was 14 years old, right around my birthday, I had this really terrible stomach problem that lasted a couple of months. I was really sick and went to the doctor. They couldn't figure it out. What was really happening was that I was eating really poorly, and so it was making me sick. Really simple stuff, but I didn't know it. So I'm looking at this and I see Saturn opposing my moon. And I thought, well, that's kind of a little too precise. And I thought, what a coincidence. So then I looked further and saw other things, that were likewise really precise. And this encouraged me to continue looking, draw charts. And, just over time, you see more and more and more synchronicities, coincidences that reflect what happens in your life. And so that's why I continued, year after year after year. And, you get better with time. There's no question, because part of the magic of astrology is that it relies on rules, but cycles that are often very long. So when you're looking at say a Saturn cycle, that's 30 years. And you can't really know Saturn until you've lived with it quite a few years and watched it operate and feel it in your bones and notice when it's really hassling you and, what is it trying to teach me? And you can read in a book and the book will say, well, it'll do this, but that's not the same as living through a...
And I've noticed a lot of people struggling really badly are in the middle of a Saturn return.
Oh, well, by the way, 9 out of 10 people that ask me for a consultation, the first thing I see is Saturn, leaning on them. because Saturn is the planet that when it comes in, it tells you you're not as in control as you thought you were. When Saturn isn't there, you think, I'm just doing fine. I don't need this. But then Saturn reminds you that there are greater forces.
And those are the people like I read, they're like, why do I keep continually having bad luck? But it's almost like it's part of the deal. Like you just have to see what you can learn from it. Because my last Saturn return, I got breast cancer. And I was told by a psychic who's now deceased, who I absolutely love, Patricia McClain. She said, the one thing about Saturn, it always leaves a gift at the door when it leaves. And my abilities went through the roof after all this, when it was leaving.
Yeah, that's what you just said is mostly true. But you do see, that's the truth as well, that you'll see people go around and around. I had a mentor when I was around, before I started meditating. I spent a year and a half selling real estate. And my real estate mentor used to say to me, listen, Andre, some people have 20 years experience and some people have 1 year's experience 20 times. And you have to understand the difference, because if you don't understand that, you're not really learning and getting better, right? So there are people who they're not getting as much out of their Saturn as they should. So they'll have a situation, and where you would learn from it, they might not, right? But what you say is also true, though. If you work at it and stay with it, and you're willing to experience some discomfort at times, yes, absolutely. Because in fact, it's the deepest learning, because there are things that stay with you. You know, you carry them far into the future. Saturn is the ruler of time, for one thing. So I'm not alone. Yours now, you said 2009, right? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I think I started, I had my Kundalini, or whatever you call it, my experience of awakening happened in February 2009. So I might have got the Cancer in 2008.
But I thought you had said 2010, that when you felt that, I thought that's what I had heard you say, no?
When did I start my channel? I started my channel, I moved out here in 2006, and within a couple of years, I got breast cancer.
Right. So that actually was Saturn in your sign, right?
Yeah, Saturn was coming through my sign when I got breast cancer.
Exactly. And you know, your sign in your particular chart is the 12th house, 12th sign. That's a health house. So it makes perfect sense. Saturn goes through there, hits you. Then you worked it out as you were moving into the Saturn return, because Saturn for you is in the next sign, Libra, after that, the actual planet. But it was circulating through Virgo, the prior sign, during 2007, 2008,
yeah,
and in 2009. And by late 2009 and into 2010, then it was going into Libra, right? So the fact that it brought you such enormous clarity following such a trial, now that's a testament to Saturn's power.
Yes. Oh my God. You know,
right.
Because I was always intuitive, but not like this.
Right. Yeah.
It just grabbed me and said, this is what you're going to do. And that's when I could start hearing the talk. What is the Pluto aspect? Because I have a very good friend. I'm not an astrologist, and she's an actress. She was very, famous actress when she was younger. She's a Capricorn. And she kept telling me, I got this Pluto thing on me. She had nothing but years of bad luck. I'd never seen anything like it. And every time I threw on her, I'd say, listen, this is going to turn around. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. Sure enough, right now her life is taking off. But I'll tell you, this girl barely made it. Is that a Pluto aspect?
A Pluto aspect, does it? Yeah, well, it could be. In other words, Pluto moves a lot more slowly than Saturn. So where Saturn takes 30 years, Pluto takes 250 years, right? So you start to think, okay, so if Saturn is crawling along and harassing you for 2.5 years to help you grow, Pluto might do that for 15 years. It's possible, because it'll sit in a sign. And then when it gets super close, that's what's happening to Cuomo. He's getting really Pluto because it's right in the degree, you see? So the hit is more intense at that moment, right? As far as you have Pluto conjunct Mars at birth, right? But that's actually, your Pluto is it's a good planet, really. When you look at it, in the sense that Pluto can still challenge you, but in that sense, it's always a hard planet. But for you, no, it would be considered a softer planet, because it's conjunct Mars and it's in the middle of a Jupiter, really helpful aspects. So it actually, for you, what it does is it really energizes. And it's probably why didn't you choose an email address with energy in it? Something about energy driven?
Energy
driven.
Driven.
Like Pluto Mars shows up in the charts of marathoners and triathletes and people that are doing extreme forms of energy. And it also, if someone says, well, I'm going to use that as an email, it's telling you that they're placing a premium on energy because they sense they've got a lot of that energy, the juice, right? So Pluto in that way, the way you look at it is Mars is the energy, just standard physical energy. Pluto makes it hyper intense, because Pluto is in a musical sense, Pluto is the higher octave of Mars, right? So, and it's why, by the way, and I'm going a little bit on a bit of a tangent here, or a bit of a detour, but Mars is the male symbol, strictly speaking, but women have it within them, just like men have Venus. But Pluto is the hyper male. It's almost like it turns into plutocracy. It turns into extreme male insanity. And it's why you see women often get in trouble through Pluto. They'll go toward a really powerful male who starts to abuse them and exploit them. And then they have to fight back and own their own power, which is the Pluto in their chart, right? So to the extent that you feel like you're in control of your own life and have personal power, then your Pluto is working well, right?
Okay.
That's basically the bottom line.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So listen, of course, the viewers are dying to know. Can you give us a little bit of what you think is going to happen about these voting rights? Have you checked that out at all in the charts?
Well,
I mean, America.
Yeah, I watch it all the time. And the thing about it is, it's a lot harder to say to someone, well, it's going to be in September. That's not that simple, unless you say, well, the election is November, so hey, they're going to win or lose, so you have to call it. But in terms of these flows, then I look at it in a broad sense, and I'm optimistic for quite a number of reasons. But the main one is the pull into Aquarius of Pluto, because it's been in Capricorn for now since 2008, right? And if you think about what happened in 2008, Obama comes into power, and people were very, very inspired, very hopeful. And in a way, we got the total opposite. All of a sudden, the opposition to Obama becomes unreasonable. They acted crazy right away. There were all those Tea Party people, and then
beige suit and everything. Yeah.
No, and I remember that I thought the Republican Party in the Bush years was already acting a little strange, because they were saying things like, well, we can make our own reality and things like that. But it accelerated dramatically in 2008. And then you saw, as we moved toward, it's another interesting pattern. When planets are in signs, what I notice is when they get to the middle of the sign, they tend to transmit the strongest force because it's in the middle. It's kind of the furthest away from either end. It used to be. So that was when Trump comes in. And if you think about it, that's when practically all over the world, you saw Boris in England, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary. It's like this drive toward autocracy, which is a Plutonian thing, in the sign of government, Capricorn.
Right.
But now it's making its way, it's getting late in Capricorn, and it's going to be in Aquarius. And
when does it move to Aquarius?
A couple of years. You have to give it a couple of years. And the precise would be 2024, yeah, but 2023, it's close, 2024. So it's going in that direction. And Aquarius, if you think about it, is the sign of community. It's actually the sign of the voter writ large. It's where you're giving power to the people. The only danger I see with Aquarius is because it also, since it rules groups, you could get corporations getting a little too much power.
Right.
And I'm not sure that corporations having power is better than the government. It probably isn't. I don't know. But certainly it's better than this notion that there can be a cabal of people or a single person, who's trying to control everything. So in that sense, I think that there will be progress around voting rights. Or what I think I heard you say, that when you play the way these guys are playing, what you do is you incite the public to respond. And so you can make all the rules you want. But unless the Supreme Court actually said, oh, yeah, we're cool with Georgia just overturning the election if they feel like it.
I
right?
never saw that. Yeah.
But if they say, no, you got to count the votes, you have a big problem. If your attitude is, we're going to try to stop you, because good luck with that. I think it's going to be comical. That thing in Georgia where they're saying it's illegal to give someone water online.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what's going to happen with what voters will do with that. Maybe they'll have like a,
oh my God,
a hose, or I don't know, they'll do something.
That's something. But I definitely, when I asked my guides about this, what I saw was a hill of ants. And by that, it's like the voters are ants, and they're going to work around anything in their way. You know how ants will work around?
Yeah.
And I feel it's caused such a chaos that those people that thought they were all that in a cup of tea, it's not happening. That the ants will figure out a way, even if they have to go with their rules. I do see the Supreme Court coming in, and I do see them saying, you can't do that. Look at Oklahoma right now. The courts just said, no, you can't pull away their $300 extra unemployment that the feds decided to give them. You can't do that. And
Right.
remember what state was it that they all voted to get extended Medicare? Was it
I think it's more
Louisiana,
than one.
someplace? And they took it to court and the judge said, you can't, they voted yes. You can't turn around and say, well, yeah, you voted yes, but you know what? We decided no. You can't
Yeah.
do that. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff coming up, but it was like ants. That's what my guide showed me. Ants figuring out different directions to work with us and make it happen.
Well, ants would be a great metaphor because they also lift more than their own weight. They're
Yes.
remarkable animals that way. They work in community and they just put their head down and do it. And so
Right.
if that's the voters, then I would say the other side is in a lot of trouble.
And the other feeling I got was that the people who would normally have been Trumpsters and voted for Trump, especially for 2022, I felt them tired. Felt like sort of a sense, maybe some of them lost family and the COVID, but I almost felt this feeling of, yeah, I'll get to it, but they don't.
You mean to vote?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, this is the thing though, in politics, you know, well, I hope they're all tired as far as I'm concerned. Great, no problem. But if you tire them out 5%, that's enough because 5% is many millions. In fact, I don't know if people have noticed this. The problem that we're experiencing is the Republicans are 5% behind the Democrats. If you look at the numbers, Biden beat Trump by 5%, and that's how much Obama beat Romney by. They're 5% behind, which is why they're desperate to try to block the vote, right? But 5% of 150 million is about 7 million, or that's what happens.
Right.
And if you get another 1%, that's another couple of million. It's disastrous. You can't win elections like that. So yeah, I could see why. I mean, Trump keeps saying he's winning and winning. He's not winning. He's losing. Where are the wins?
Oh my
Where?
God. He lost the House. He lost the Senate. He lost the presidency.
Yeah, and he lost this. He's going to lose his tax battle with Congress. He lost
Yes,
already
he's
with.
the loser.
Yeah, exactly. So, the other thing astrologically that I should mention is you can look back to prior cycles and get a pretty good idea of the democratic pattern. So I had pulled a video up a while back, twice actually, where I said, if you look at Saturn going through Aquarius, where it is now, and Pisces, where it will be as we go into the 2024 election, right? It takes beyond the 2024 election for it to switch to Aries. So look back, those were the Clinton years. Look back before that, it was the years of Lyndon Johnson. Look back before that, and it was FDR. Those signs tend to correlate with democratic government, which is, it reflects back the Aquarius factor, Saturn being there, right? It's one of the reasons I knew the odds of Biden winning were really good, because Saturn would be going into Aquarius as his presidency would start, which is exactly what happened, right?
Wow, that's true.
Yeah. So in that sense, that also gives me optimism heading into both 22 and 24, right?
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not saying it's still crazy out there. When you see
And you got people saying, well, it's a given. It's going to be the Republicans that win in 2022 because that's how it goes. I just heard no.
No.
And it could be because I'm scared. Please, God, no. But my guides are pretty dead on. And when they showed me the ant thing, I said, oh, I got, okay, cool. We're cool.
Yeah. No, and I mean, at one point, not that I knew it, I had to look at it to see it, but I looked at McCarthy, whose time is known, McConnell, whose time is not, but you can get a pretty good feel by what happened to him, the way things, because you can look back and the patterns were kind of similar to when he wasn't in power back in 2009.
Okay.
Again now, right? But I looked at 2022, and around the time of the election, what struck me was McConnell and McCarthy, it's not that good. It's actually, but Biden, he's got a really happy November of 2022. Why? Why is he so happy in November of 2022?
He's in charge because the people have spoken.
Right, but then he's not up for re-election. But if he loses the House and or the Senate, he's got a big problem. So why is he so happy? Because he's got Jupiter is stationary in super late Pisces, trining his Sun and Venus. I mean, how much better do you want than that? That's the classic signature where you're feeling, and I mean, I'm sure he's philosophical, but not that philosophical.
I love it.
So,
when I asked my guides about the wins that are coming up in 2022, I can't even, and I don't want to be pompous or act like I know it all, but they're pretty good about, like, remember you even knew that Trump was going to lose the
Mhm.
election. It was so clear. But what I wanted to ask you is I tell my people, FDR came through to me. He's the
Hmm.
one that told me Biden was going to win, by the way.
Wow.
Very clear. And he also said Biden's going to present, I could still see his blue eyes. He was much younger. He said Biden's going to present the New Deal, like me.
Hmm.
So you know how they're fighting and it might go through and they're you know what he said to me? Accept whatever you can get, because come 2022, you can add on whatever else you want it.
Well, if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because part of the issue is getting the endorsement. You know,
Right.
I mean, when you're winning elections, what Republicans are trying to do is they're trying to, and I've heard them say this. I mean, it's out there. This is the thing about the media. They tell you everything. They're trying to create chaos so that by 2022, we'll switch parties again. They're trying to make it seem like nothing is happening. But
Right.
I keep hearing that those 17 are going to vote for the infrastructure. That's what I keep hearing.
Oh, it's up to 22 now. McConnell and somebody else is going to vote for it.
Well, then there's that, and then there's reconciliation to bring in the other package. You know, I don't see the problem. I think this is going to happen. There's enough there, you know, not to mention that all these other Trumpers like DeSantis, this man is crazy. He's putting people's lives at risk. I don't understand the logic.
And by the way, the courts just said that the what you call industry, the what do you call the cruise ship industry,
yes,
has a right to ask for mask and for proof of vaccination, or they just said he can't say no. And the schools are suing him too.
I mean, I thought that isn't this private enterprise? I thought that companies were allowed to do whatever they wanted. I mean, Republicans are funny. They really are. They're a funny bunch. Like,
Well,
one
what
minute,
do you think? I don't know if you've looked at him, and forgive me if I didn't let you know I was going to ask this. Rand Paul, what's up with him? Did you ever look at his chart?
you know, I think there's no time for him, so I didn't know. I didn't look too closely, but I mean, just on intuition, looking at the guy.
Announcement that we need to refuse vaccination and mask and blah blah, and it was like, wait a second, who the hell is this guy?
Well, there is. I mean, to be fair, sort of, because that's the wrong word, but he's a libertarian, and the libertarian ideas, they sort of sound reasonable, but they're really pretty crazy. I mean, his father was saying, you know, when he was in Congress, he was saying that if there was something like a tornado or an earthquake, that the government shouldn't help the people of that region. Like, what? Are you crazy? I mean, honestly, I remember Joe Scarborough, ex-Republican, who now has his own show, and he was just laughing and saying, "This man is crazy. Politically, it's suicide." And even
win. They still win.
They do. But I mean, again, they've been a lot more clever and a lot more malevolent and Machiavellian than Democrats at rigging the game, right? They always talk about rigged elections. They're the ones rigging. I read a stat that says that they have half the Senate control with 41 million less voters. That's crazy. It's completely unfair. Think about that. 41 million less voters, right? And yet they're telling you, oh, it's kind of split, and it's not. You know, you guys are way behind. So, you know, I mean, these things are important to consider. I mean, and the idea is we outnumber them. Just keep showing up. Like, the most frustrating thing for me has been watching Democrats hurt themselves, right? Because if you look back all the way to 2000, there would have been no Republicans elected at all, including Trump's year. Trump's year was an undervote by Democrats.
Right.
So if Democrats vote and they don't get confused, you know, and think, oh, you know, like people who are saying, oh, I'm following Bernie, but Trump is like Bernie. Trump is like Bernie? Seriously? Are you serious about that? So then, you know, then they wouldn't vote for Hillary. And back in 2000, you probably know that was, you know, Ralph Nader got 90,000 votes in Florida. And then they were arguing about 500 votes for George W. Bush. And that caused the Iraq War. It caused multiple judges, right? 5 of those judges came from Democrats not voting. Why are you complaining about the Supreme Court? You know, really, that's the thing. Make up your mind. Every election, I would say right now, up and down, local, anything you vote in, vote Democrat. Don't worry if just do it, because Republicans are not, you know, they're not willing to govern. They're talking about taking away, you know, democracy.
So did you look at anything with the Supreme Court? Have you had a look at that?
At the Supreme Court,
Have you looked at any kind of, I don't know how you would astrology wise read the Supreme Court, or can you?
Well, it's not that easy to read the court. I'd have to read the justices and try to get a feel that way. And the problem is there aren't too many times available. So I lump the Supreme Court in, the broader picture. And my sense of the Supreme Court is they're part of this period now where we're in Aquarius and Pisces, and whether they like it or not, they have to go. Because if you notice with the Supreme Court, I don't know if you paid attention, they are supposed to be really right wing. People are panicked, they're really right wing. They're not going to rule against 60% of the majority. They're not going to do that. They're not that stupid, because they know that think about it, you're on that court and you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, then what'll happen is if you get a strong enough Democratic majority, they'll add seats to the court and then you'll lose your power, right?
Well, even that trying to get rid of Obamacare.
Right, but
nothing else in place, not a thing.
Right, but you notice Roberts was wise and he stopped it, right? He said, no, he said, oh, it's a tax, right? And the latest round, they stopped it again. And what about, they're supposed to be super right wing, they approved gay marriage because they knew most of the public wants it. So they're not going to get in there and forget that. And social forces are too strong. So now, mind you probably will say they've passed that law for Arizona, where Arizona can take away voting boxes and do all these weird things, but they're not saying you can just cheat.
They're not saying you can change it.
Correct. They're saying you can make it hard for people to vote. But all I can say is, if it's hard, figure it out. I'm sorry, you have to figure it out.
That's the end thing.
Yeah.
Will work around whatever they have to.
I mean, and that becomes, and Stacey Abrams, I'm sure, is going to work on that really hard.
Oh, she's going to really work.
She knows the obstacles, and maybe you got to get buses. I don't know, do things to
whatever we have to do. If I have to do money
and the thing is,
license.
It's a bit like Saturn too. Saturn, when you experience Saturn, if you get in there and work it, the work gets easier, right? At first it's, oh my God, this is such a lift. And then you realize, oh no, it's not that bad. Okay, I can stop doing that thing that was hurting me, and I can do this new thing that is a little difficult. Then it gets easier. So the same thing with this. If we can win one election after another, it'll get easier because the Republicans will stop playing the same game. They'll know it isn't working, right? They'll have to figure out. But if we go win, loss, then they keep thinking, well, we can just come back. We lost this time, but we were so close that, So
Andre, did you look at Mitch McConnell? I can't remember.
Mitch McConnell, I looked at his day, but there's no time. And he's a Pisces with a lot of Aquarius planets, and he's got the strong Pluto, but he uses the Pluto in a kind of autocratic, overpowering kind of way. But the way McConnell's patterns, he was out of power up to 2014. He didn't have control of the Senate, right? And the cycles, particularly in like 9, 10, 11, they mirror where they are now, which is why he's out of power again. It's why I had figured out, together with Schumer, because Schumer's chart looked really good. So I thought, well, Schumer's looks really good. McConnell's looks compromised. I think we're going to win the Senate. Because at first I didn't think. I thought, oh my God, how are we going to win those 2 seats in Georgia?
Yeah.
But I mean, think about that too. You could almost predict it. It's like these guys are they're like the Cassandra crossing, the train going toward. People were saying Trump is going to he's going to take away that seat because he keeps talking about himself. He doesn't want to talk about the candidates. So then they lost, right?
Right.
That they should have won. Yeah. So McConnell.
Well, it's a big deal. And you might remember this because I saw us winning big in 2018? And Trump went door to door on the road telling everybody, you got to vote for the Republicans. And they lost so many seats. In fact, that guy, Michael, the writer that writes about him all the time, was Michael Schmidt or something like that. He said the worst mood anybody saw Trump was that day when they won an extra Senate seat. That was it. And Trump trying to act like, oh, hey, we won a Senate seat. But they lost, 20-something seats in Congress?
Yeah, they lost. They lost more than that.
And or 30-something, yeah. And they said Trump was furious because he went out there on the line and told everybody, you got to do this, you got to do this. And that was the beginning for him of the end, because that people weren't coming out because he said so.
Yeah.
That amazes me how they still say that he's the master and he's not really helping them out at all. And I find it interesting that Mitch McConnell is actually changing his tune and voting for this infrastructure bill. Do you think there's something underhanded about that, or?
I think McConnell, my sense of him is, whatever you may think of his Machiavellian way of being, he's a lot more clever a politician than Trump is. He's been around longer and he is smarter. I'm sorry, but he just is. It's just that he's quite evil. You know, he's quite, he's a right-wing thinker.
I mean, he sits up there, I'm not, nothing Biden touches will pass. That's it.
Yeah, but he probably figured out, I mean, these guys, they track numbers and they probably figured out it's going to be worse if we.
90% of Americans want the New Deal.
Right, exactly. So he probably figured that out. And he probably noticed that some of his people were pulling in that direction. And it's probably a political calculus. He probably just decided, I got to do this. But Trump is furious. He keeps releasing those, you know.
Yeah, he keeps writing about it. And there is one new guy that just got on board that slowed it down. And he was bragging about this guy, what a great guy he is. But none of them are changing their minds. They're going to go for it.
I mean, the thing is, in a way, you could say, you could say, well, they shouldn't agree to anything. But the problem is the Democrats have the capacity through reconciliation to pass something really big anyway, right? So if you think about the politics of going into 2022 with something that will pass, whether you like it or not, so then you can't go back to your district and say you had anything to do with it, which now you could, right? For some people, they can, you know, they do that. They'll go and brag about the money they're getting, even while they're criticizing it in public. They're so evil, right? But think about going into that 22 election and you've done nothing and you have to talk about how Democrats have passed this thing and new jobs and the country's moving. Plus, they keep showing you on TV all the time images of the insurrection and the panel is investigating. It's a total loser, you know, it really is. I would not, if I were the Democratic Party, keep running those films, those tapes, don't stop, you know, show people what happened on January 6th, call them in, constantly keep it in the news. You know?
And Trump said it was a love fest.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Fest. Everybody was just so happy and in love with each other.
Oh, I know, I saw that. Yeah, they were using flagpoles up your butt to remind you of how happy they were. I know.
That hanging thing they built for Pence is a pretty good visual right there.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's
That's
really
not a love fest.
It's remarkable. See, and Pence had really difficult transits. He's a Gemini, so and he's near the Trump degrees. So his popularity went way down, and then he ran into Saturn problems, pretty bad Saturn problems early in the year. So he was caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, in a way, he probably had the worst possible place in that because Trump expected him to do something he couldn't do. And I keep seeing online that they call him a traitor for not having done that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I
They
mean,
really had it all on him. They thought for sure he'd say, I'm not going to do this. But he had no power with that. He was only supposed to accept it.
yeah, you could. I mean, they're so unreasonable though that way. You know, and they think that, I mean, their logic is, if I read it, they're kind of saying, well, they should have just overturned all the states and then the Supreme Court should agree. But on what basis? You know, there was never any evidence of anything. You know, it's so crazy. Imagine someone took you to court and said, well, okay, you're convicted. You go to jail on what evidence? There's no evidence. We don't like you. So
there you go. Like the stop the steal, like they can't prove the steal.
No. I mean, evidence becomes, I've been through this in my life where people will say, you know, I lost the case, and to them evidence is because I wrote it down. You know, but that's not, you know, that's not right. You have to show.
So have you looked at Kavanaugh at all? Years ago when he was up, people begged me, Linda, please tell me he's not going to win. And I'll never forget, I was in Oklahoma and I said, you guys, he's going to get in. I said, but don't worry. I saw a hand on his shoulder and them assisting him in exiting. So something was going to happen. I think, I don't know if you looked at his chart, but I think that he's going to have to exit.
I don't have a time for him either. So because once he got in, I sort of lost interest, but I could take a look again. There might be, even in the day chart, there might be something, you know, coming up. Because yeah, I hear those rumors too, that if the right environment happens around, you know, the Congress being strong, democratic, and so forth, that the
Yeah, they'll
investigations.
take though, and it won't be about all the complaints the FBI failed to look at because Trump said no. It'll be about lying to Congress.
Right. And it's amazing. I mean, that again, these are really negative markers for this whole right-wing insanity. Kavanaugh, as tainted as he is, and he's pretty tainted. I mean, the man has got some pretty strange things happening, that are documented, and yet he was not willing to go along with the insurrection either. He was one of the ones that said no way, right? So I kept thinking, well, if Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and
he was actually standing up for the Constitution, and I think you're going to see more of that from him. While all this pressure is on, he's going to watch his do's and don'ts.
Again, well, it's interesting. See, that's an example of where someone is forced to be more democratic. That guy, he was agitating in the 90s against Clinton. He's a really committed Republican thinker,
Right.
So, but it's a little bit like, remember Ralph Northam? He got caught with blackface. And the curious thing was, within a week, he was getting all the support from the African-American community because they knew, okay, we got you now. You're not even going to have to behave and you're going to be nice to us. It's clever. The African-American voting bloc is actually the most attuned, voting bloc.
That's something. That's great.
If they vote, because in 2016, they didn't vote enough. And that was not totally helpful.
Right. And, also with, but the other thing is that Russia really got Hillary to be non-tasteful.
Russia?
Russia was in on that election.
Oh yeah, in 2016, for sure.
And I just feel like they just really were able to make her, people didn't like the Clintons. They didn't like her because she was a woman, because she was a smart woman.
Yeah, the thing is, here's where you go to the law of unintended consequences. So when you look at 2015, in a way, it was the triumph of the, remember that guy Gorka? He says, the alpha male is back in charge. Okay, so you got Hillary didn't win. Putin obviously hates Hillary because Hillary gets in his face. Hillary, is a lot more hawkish than Obama. Hillary is, she's a little bit like Margaret Thatcher. If she doesn't like what you're doing internationally, she sends in the jets. So Putin doesn't like Hillary at all, right?
Right.
But think about what's happened. And Trump, by the way, Trump is saying, I'm misogynist, this is all against women. What Trump has achieved is the rise of women, because now there are more women in Congress, and I think it'll accelerate. This is Eris, the discovery of Eris in 2005 upends Pluto, which is the plutocracy, the male-dominated, plutocracy type thing. Eris pushes back on that, and it's been growing, right? It actually, it's not just women, it's women or any group that has been left behind starts to gain more and more power. And that's what's happened. If you think back to around 2004 or 5, LGBTQ, African-American women, there's been a steady, improvement.
Good, yeah.
Through there. And I think you'll see, like when people look back historically and assess Trump, they'll say he got the reverse of what he was trying to do. He was trying to bring in dominant male power, and what he got was more and more women in Congress, as a reaction, to
right.
To what he was
and
doing.
I want to say too that I read a lot of Republican men, and there's some fantastic good Republican men.
Well, you mean though
They're still Republican, but they can't stand Trump.
Yeah, but traditional Republican, right? Traditional, like, for example, I think Romney is a good person. I think he's a solid citizen. I don't agree,
He's all about the money. He's sort of two-faced.
Well,
although he did vote against Trump. He did say impeach him.
Right. Like, okay, he that's what I was going to say, that he's all about the money, in the sense that you remember in 2012, his campaign started to go down the tubes when they asked him about some money that he hadn't declared or some kind of thing. And he said, well, it's only a small amount. And they, well, how much is it? 380,000. And some people thought, what? Like, it's because it's peanuts for you, but for most people, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So definitely what I'm saying is he's decent in the sense that he would never do what Trump is doing.
No.
And he governs. He's done some good things. He brought in healthcare in Massachusetts. So that he's, thinking for the public. So I meant in that sense, not in the sense that I would vote for him or anything, yeah.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
So did you look at Putin, by the way?
Yeah, Putin, the thing with Putin, remember, it's Russia. So Putin, the chart, it's supposed to be 9:30 a.m. Okay, say I believe it. In fact, I hope it is, because with Putin, I think his problem is going to be when Saturn gets to Aries, which it does post 2024. When we get into 2025, Saturn enters Aries because he's a Libra, and it's going to oppose him. And he's been there many years. It's also a health. If he's born at 9:30, his sun is in the 12th, which is a health pattern. So Saturn opposing it, I think, will be problematic because he's gone through the other planets and he's done fairly well, even though they put pressure on him.
Right.
Nothing seems to phase
My
the
vision of him, psychic vision, that I've told people for years now, is I saw him running for his life.
Running for his life?
Running for his life. Like he's trying to get away because the people are coming after him.
Wow.
So that's what I saw. That's my vision. And I wasn't sure at the time. I thought it could be a couple of years. I think that's passed. But I really think, like, if that guy had died in jail, and still if he dies in jail, it could be the end of Putin. I think he knows better than to let him die.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Russia is that would be a great prediction. I hope you're right that it comes true because that one seems almost improbable because they have such control. The numbers they're backing him too much. You need a little bit more momentum where.
Well, I think the oligarchs might step down because I think there's going to be money issues, even more so with Russia. And they might look at him like, you know what, you're costing us too much.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Russia that people have to remember is they're a dangerous power because they have nuclear weapons and they're really aggressive. But it's a small economy. They have less economy than Italy. I mean, it's where are you going to go with that?
They want to be big time.
Yeah, I know, but it's hard. I mean, to do that's why you always hear, I often wonder, like, why is it that the American government can put so much pressure just by imposing sanctions? So they'll say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. The US has a lot of power in the monetary system. So the Russians hate that because they have all these tentacles internationally with money. And when they put a clamp on that drives Putin crazy. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sorry, I don't understand. I actually know people in North America that like Putin's style of governance. It's horrible. That guy he's just pillaging the country. I hear he has this multi-billion-dollar home, and you think, why do you need something like that? What is that about?
Likes to ride on a horse without a shirt. I mean,
oh, come on. I mean,
it's gross.
It's just bad form. It's bad form. I mean, it sets an example for people that, life is like this cheap, people are all oppressing each other. What is that about? Well,
that's like Trump too, with the golden lady and everything gold.
Yeah.
That to me, that's kind of ugly. To me, that's my own opinion.
Yeah, no, and I mean Trump is the king of, I mean, he's
and Putin helped feed him, so he was happy to do with whatever Putin wanted to do. More stuff is coming out about that, by the way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that probably more will come out. That the thing about the US, this is my understanding of the US it's why I use that chart that is the 5:10 p.m. puts the Aquarius moon in the third sign, which is the sign of media. The US has a really robust media system. And if you notice, all the stuff we're hearing now is detail on what we knew in December. We already heard all this stuff about Clark and all this. I used to read it and go, holy smoke. Now we're hearing the exact sentence that he said. And look, there's this paper where someone wrote it down, but some reporter got it already then, which is remarkable, right?
Right,
so
right.
They'll bring things out. I mean, and I'm amazed that Trump, he hates them, of course, but he should be more scared because there are so many of them looking around and digging and finding things.
Right.
There's always someone that'll tell you, someone that doesn't like Trump inside and will leak it, or, so right. The media system here is terrific, which in Russia, they have no media system because Putin, they know that they have to silence it. Otherwise.
That's very sad. So when you look at the United States of America, do you get, based on a general chart, are you feeling like some good news, some things coming up? I know climate-wise, we're going through hell right now.
Yeah, but in a way, that's the reaction to the pandemic, though, in some ways, because when people are sequestered, you have to be disciplined to go through periods like this and not lose your marbles.
I know.
So if you're like on the border of criminality, then you tilt that way and you go for it. But that's probably temporary, I think. My sense is, though, I do think it's going to be tense for quite a while around this Trump thing. because it's not just Trump. It's this thing that in the US chart, you can see the patterns are really similar to the Civil War. So there's this disaffected, very large group now, which they're saying the same thing that they were saying in the 1850s and 60s. They didn't like their power taken away. And back then it was, is they wanted slaves, right? But remember, back then they had money, they could fund an army. It's harder to do. That's an important, that's a big distinction. I mean, if you're going to create an actual civil war, that was a real civil war because they had the money to create their own, army, literally.
Right.
And yet it wasn't big enough to overcome the rest of the country's
Right,
army.
we had
Right?
muskets and cannons, but
Right.
now they want to go up against the United States and our military with jets and.
It's too much, right? But see, that's the thing, though. That's easier to do if you control the government, which they don't. So tense, yes, but I'm optimistic that it's a losing cause. But it's the same cause because all the data seems to point to white, especially white men, and especially if they're not educated, they have this resentment about immigrants and women. And I mean, can you imagine, like, if women hadn't voted, Trump would be president? Do you know that?
Oh, I know.
Like, absolutely. There's no
I
way.
also think 500,000 people dying had something to do with it too.
Well, clearly, but nevertheless, the numbers tell you if men only vote, then Biden loses. So
Yeah, white men still are for Trump.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in part, you could say they're going to get older, disappear eventually. The new crop might be different. With the astrology, it supersedes all that. It's telling you well into the middle of the decade and probably beyond. I think the most dangerous period is probably after 2024.
Really?
Well, because if you think about it, the logic would be that mirrors the point when the Civil War started in 1861. It was after Lincoln was elected in 1860 because they knew he's coming for our slaves, right? So 6 months later, the war starts, right? Well, if these guys lose in 2024, they're going to feel desperate because they're going to feel there's just no way to do this. Now, that's what I'm thinking, but you might be right. Did you say you were thinking there would be you were intuiting another insurrection at some point?
Oh, yeah, they're talking about it. I feel like much ado about nothing.
As in, like, it just doesn't happen?
FBI or CIA. I just feel like I told everybody, don't worry, there's going to be little cells trying to rear their heads. And I feel like they get taken out, like boom, boom. And they'll advertise the Bureau just jumped in on this place making bombs. I mean, there's going to be stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you notice that a lot of that was easier when Trump was there because the idea of going to the Michigan legislature and bringing your guns and shutting it down, that happens only when you have a cooperative president. You try that now and you've got a big problem because under Trump, even the law enforcement, FBI, CIA, they couldn't really go in and defend because then Trump would say, that's not right,
Right. And I'll
So-
tell you, if he was still president or forced his way in, all those people in trouble for what they did to our Capitol would all gotten off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Although I still say though, I mean, have you pondered that? How is it possible? I mean, there's a lot of, I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's not a lot of brain power in this party. They're having a real deficit of brain power. How could that ever work? Think it logically, right? Okay, first of all, Milley told them in 2020, I'm not doing this, right? I remember reading that. That was the press. Because how would I know? I see it in the news. And later, Milley confirms, yes, I was not into that, 100%. How are you going to mount this? Okay, so you send these people to the Capitol. Imagine the worst that happened. And they had done, maybe they kill somebody. They hang Mike Pence, I don't know. Or they get Nancy
Oh, I
Pelosi.
thought about that. What if they
Okay.
had actually on camera killed one of our?
They would have gotten in a lot of trouble. A lot. Then
No, it's terrible, but I even thought if that happened, this would have been worse for them.
oh yeah, the army would have surrounded the building. It would have been a total massacre for them. How do they
Yes.
think, like, you think you can go there and stop the vote and change democracy? I mean, look, I appreciate people saying it was an insurrection and all that. That was just a stupid idea to get yourself in a lot of trouble because the army, in fact, Milley said, I'm the one with the guns. This isn't going to happen. He was being
Right.
really vocal. So, if this happens, the National Guard, they would have surrounded. There's no way. Like, how's that even going to work? Trump would have given an order and Milley would have said that's an illegal order. I'm not
Yeah,
following
he
it.
works for the Constitution. He doesn't.
Yeah. So, there's a lot. I mean, this is the thing too. It's never a good idea to have a party where a large block of your voters aren't very smart. It's not. It's just not a good idea. Well, it's true. Isn't it true?
Well, can you imagine running around with a Confederate flag? The people who lost. They lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Well,
love Nazis. The Nazis lost.
well, yeah. Trump keeps saying winners, 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 and he wants to back all the losers.
I know, it's
I mean,
so weird.
Like General Lee lost the war. You lost the war. That's it. You
I think
lost.
it's interesting because I'm reading General Grant's biography and everything. I think it's interesting that Lincoln said, they weren't going to punish them. They didn't punish Lee. They didn't hang these insurrectionists. They didn't do any of that. It was like, go on about your business.
But in a way, this is sometimes the problem with the Democratic Party is there's not enough follow through. I mean, you don't have to hang the guy or punish him or anything, but you can take strong steps and say, no, there is going to be no slavery whatsoever. Don't even think about that because we're going to enforce this really harshly because it's a horrible thing. What do you mean? Like you want a right to enslave people? What are you, crazy? No.
I think the January 6th commission that are getting ready to put out subpoenas, I think they will go and arrest people who don't show because at first they're going to try to show their rear and I'm not showing, I'm not doing it. I think they will arrest people.
Yeah, let's just say that the terrain is very unfavorable for all that. As far as I'm concerned, it's very unfavorable, but people also have to be patient. You cannot, I keep in my channel, I keep seeing, oh, Trump gets away with everything. I mean, I like watching what I will do is I'll watch a crime show and I look for dates because I can pick up like when people get arrested and stuff like that, like serial killers, it's always Saturn, right? They're doing all this bad stuff and then Saturn comes in and they get put in jail, right? But they'll say something like some guy or some woman who's done some horrible things and they have all the evidence. I mean, the case is open and shut and they'll say, oh, they were caught in 1994 and blah, blah. And they'll say, and then in 1998, they went to court. And I'll think, what? That's 4 years. What was happening for 4 years? It's a slow process, right? The legal system, because they don't want to lose the case. So they'll go, and the other side gets to argue, they get to delay, put it in court, in and out, and in a way, it's frustrating. You want like Vladimir Putin, just shoot the guy. Yeah, but that could happen to you, right? If you are in trouble. So democracy protects you that way, but it's very frustrating when people like Trump don't get, they're not there.
Twitter is posting some of the horrible language that a lot of these people are saying about the libtards. They're gonna, be taken out and all this. And I thought they really must think libtards don't own guns.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that there though, that part in a way that's you could say it's the dark side of astrology because the country was very divided in the 1850s. That's when Neptune was opposite itself. So Neptune has a 165-year orbit, right? So halfway was the Civil War. And it's curious how when Neptune went back to its place, coincided with the Second World War, and the country was united because we had an external enemy, right? So
exactly. That's Neptune, what unites us, like 9/11, yeah.
Exactly. So Neptune was in its own sign, and then the US is in on, everyone is together, but now it's back to where it was at the moment of opposition, right? So there's just this really big disagreement, right? Because you've got call them know-nothings, people with very little education, but there's a large block that for other reasons, I think of Republicans or that sector as like, they're either greedy or thievish or stupid. There's a triangle.
Right.
One of those, many are greedy. They don't want to pay any taxes, as far as they're concerned. The democratic way of governance where people pay taxes to get services, right? To get things.
They're the first one to call the police or go to a hospital, county.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, no, then they expect it to happen like that, and which is completely unreasonable.
The good news, especially and I've read some Trumpsters too. The good news is that most everybody just wants really to have peace. They want to be able to raise their kids. They want to be able to have a decent living and jobs and even a wage that they can afford to not have to depend on the government.
Yeah, Yeah, no, that's totally true. And the thing is, I mean, the unfortunate part is that, you know, we all thought, well, as soon as Biden comes in, that's what Biden thought too. He said, oh, as soon as I'm president, it'll calm down. No, sorry, it hasn't happened.
Right.
But,
Oh, I
but
do see Biden being able to tax the rich too, but this won't happen until 2022 when they take everything again. I see him being able to, because right now he's staying away from it because too many people are acting up.
yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the political message, if you think about it, right? The political message always is, if Republicans squeak a victory in 2022, they'll say, well, the American people have given us the mandate to block everything you're doing. But if they lose, that's a big problem, because then you can say the opposite, right? And they'll try, but it's a tough message because the losses add up, which is why it's so important that people realize you have to vote. Just show up, show up.
Yeah, get out there, work around
Yeah,
all that stuff.
exactly.
Find out
Yeah,
what you need to do.
exactly.
And I
Yeah.
do see like money's going towards helping people pay for the things like, you know, the anything they need to help them be able to be qualified to vote. So
Yeah, that's
driver's
entirely
license,
possible.
whatever you need your birth certificate, you know, because birth certificates are like $35.
Yeah, see, that's another bait and switch amazing thing they do, because they'll say, well, you have to have you know, ID, but a driver's license works, but a college ID doesn't work. Well, why not? I mean, the person goes to college. What are you talking about? So why don't they make an ID? See, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to say, let's give everybody an ID so they can present it. No, because if we do that, then they'll present it and they can vote.
And if you're a female and you change your name, you have to show your birth certificate with the name you were born with. You have to show your marriage. You have to show your divorce record with the name change on there. You have to show the marriage record with the new husband. Me, I've been through 3 husbands. It's a cluster, you know what? I'd be coming in there with all kinds of papers, you know. Let's see, which husband was this? Hold on. Oh yeah, that worthless SOB. Here.
Yeah, by the way, that's in your chart. You've got a bit of a, you can see the potential, let's say, for, you know, some problems.
Yeah, I should have never got married, but you know, because my childhood, I had some very stressful factors. But the good news is, at my age today in my life, I absolutely could care less about being in any kind of relationship. And it's not an anger push. It's more of a, I'm so comfortable right now. Why mess it up with some sort of marriage situation?
True. Although to give you the counterpoint, well, and it's interesting. We'll see what this does, because the thing about planets is that they don't necessarily function in just one particular realm. Like you've got Jupiter here in 2022, and even into 23, it's going to go through your marriage house, right? So that can mean good partnerships, but it doesn't have to mean that you know, get married or find one specific partnership. It becomes kind of a matter of choice.
Butler is finally going to come looking for me.
The which?
Gerard Butler, is he finally come looking for me?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, when Jupiter goes, like basically, Jupiter is a great benefactor. So whatever it is you're focused on, as it goes through that house, it makes it possible. So it's coming up next year and the year after. So
I'd cook for him. I'd cook for him in a New York minute.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So.
Oh gosh, it was so wonderful. Andre, I got to tell you, I've had such a good time talking to you. I think everybody's going to love this. Thank you so much.
That was a pleasure. That was fun. I mean, anytime you get me talking astrology and politics, I get really animated because
I know. Well, I could tell yesterday, you and I talked for a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, he's going to be easy peasy. There's so many good people in, oh, look, even Jack wants to say hi. There's so many people in this whole realm of astrologers and stuff. I met some fantastic people, and a lot of them are just really good personalities. And you're one of on my top list.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Likewise to you. And yeah, it is good. I mean, this is the upside of all the growth in technology is there's a lot of disinformation, but there's also the opportunity to put out really good information, which there wasn't before, you know. So
right. And also, you know, with astrology, sometimes, like I told you, it's like a different language for me. Mm-hmm. My most favorite person in the world died. She was an astrologer, psychic, and she told me everything that happened to my life up till now. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, she's like you. She kind of knew I didn't get that. Well, such and such trying this and da, da, da. I
Yeah.
hear that, but it's not my language. And so
Right.
kind of get to the meat of the situation. So
Sure. Yeah.
thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.